Hey guys, welcome back to the Results Junkies podcast. We're talking AI in a couple of different ways today, including the disturbing story about Scarlett Johansson's voice becoming a part of OpenAI, and what happens when you actually try to leave. Is this a little bit of a Hotel California moment for OpenAI and ChatGPT? And if we get time, we might loop back on OpenTable and then potentially reconsidering what you and I both agreed was probably the worst decision that they've made in the history of their company.
One of the few things we might have agreed on, yes.
Yeah, it happens every once in a while after 150 episodes. But welcome back to the land of the living after your 75th time with some sort of gunk in your lungs. We're happy that you're still upright.
Yeah, we're on the other side of COVID again. I don't want to jinx myself, but I feel like it's been 3 weeks of just being sick in some way. And I'm knocking on wood right now. I'm pretty sure I'm on the upswing and the family's on the upswing. So today's the first day I feel like I'm human again.
Love it.
But yeah, how are you doing, by the way?
I'm good. There has not been any COVID, knock on wood, in our house. I don't have any wood nearby. All right, hold on. Not any COVID in our house for quite some time. We've had some gunk here and there, but it's been a good few months, so we're probably due. I need to pound those little emergency packets. I'm a vitamin C hog.
You know, I haven't looked this up, but are they still giving out boosters? They probably are, right? I mean,
yep, they're still booster. Yeah, we did not get boosted. Not a political statement, just but just in terms of what our risk tolerance is. We got issued. We have reasons why we wouldn't boost both of our kids for different health reasons. You know, Michelle and I could probably get boosted, and we're definitely in that. We're in that band of age, man. You know, we're things like shingles shots and all kinds of other fun stuff are on the radar.
Mm-hmm. Look at us talking about being old.
Speak for yourself. You're still a spring chicken.
I don't know, man. I don't know. My run times are getting better.
Not this week. But, not this week.
I was going to say. But all right, so then let's talk about, well, I was going to say before we get there, let's talk about your travel startups. So you're still on the hunt.
Well, we actually are, but I think we're getting ready to make our next investment. I'm waiting for Aaron to send over the term sheet for
Why are you holding these deals back from me, man? You guys, by the way, y'all heard it here from me first. Like it doesn't matter how friendly you are with somebody, but we all hide our deals until our own respective paperwork is done. There's no like, hey, you want to get in this with me? It's like, no. I just did this deal. Now I'll tell you about it.
Hey, look, I shared one with you. I know we can't say certain things, but I did share one with you that you're currently syndicating. So,
that's true.
I'm not all bad.
Yeah, I don't want to have a bunch of black SUVs show up in front of my house, but wink, wink, nudge, nudge. If you're interested in co-investing with us, check out my AngelList syndicate. We'll put a link to the syndicate itself in AngelList, or you can just message me on social. But yeah, there's a syndicate out there closing in the next week or two, depending on when you listen to this episode. Come check it out. And it's probably the only way to get onto the same deal as Ed at the same terms as Ed, because we all know he's a blood-sucking capitalist and always gets the best deals for himself.
And I will note that I think, if I remember correctly, I think you used the word notable in reference to me in there. So
I did. Mostly because I am not notable in the travel startup world. So I had to list you as the notable investor, and your Slack channel seemed to light up, particularly around that one word. I think I'm just going to use that word more often now.
I think they just know that's the nicest thing you've ever said about me.
True, but don't get used to it.
Oh, I'm not.
I hope that when you now book your flights, whatever airline you book, you know how they have that little preface to your name? I hope you select notable now.
I wish that was an option.
That's one of the options.
I wish that was an option. I don't think it's going to be.
I wonder though, does anybody actually use that? Like if I actually...
Oh, I'm sure there's somebody who ticks doctor or one of those ones. Yeah.
Oh, I'm gonna go with honorable or something.
Honorable.
Like that.
Yeah, we're gonna get you your own kingship here and a lordship or something in the future. That'll be on the list.
Oh, honorable Mr. Singh, what are you doing sitting back by the bathrooms?
That's because you're not traveling with me. Because when you travel with me, you don't sit back by the bathrooms.
Well, that's funny actually. I should have responded. So, our mutual friend was asking about whether or not he should go to Collision Conference. And what I wanted to respond is only go if Ed's paying for the trip.
Nice. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, Collision is happening soon. I did think that was a good fit for him. I wanted to go. I enjoy that conference. I enjoy Web Summit a little bit more, but that's right when our daughter's graduating from high school. So
Can I just ask you a question about this? It's a little off topic and we didn't talk about it in the pre-show, but I'm curious now that I'm putting you on the spot, like When you think about your portfolio companies spending money on conferences, and I'm not picking on this one, I'm just
Yeah.
saying in general,
Yeah.
what's your rule of thumb on that? Like, do you ever think about like, what is too much for a startup to be spending on conferences?
I do, yeah, and I do think there's a time component as well because there's only so many hours in the day, and actually the reason why I told Julian to reach out to you was because I thought you'd give an opinion more similar to Russell, my business partners, than mine, in that Russell tends to be slightly bearish on these sorts of things, and I'll tell you his reasoning why, and then I'll share mine. So we've had portfolio companies that have wanted to go to Web Summit in the past, which is a massive tech conference over in Europe, and he's generally said no. And his reasoning is there are roughly 6,000 startups that present at Web Summit, and so the signal to noise ratio is just way off the charts. It's great for us as investors, but not as great for the founders. For me, I think there are a number of reasons, and I think you mentioned one, but I think the ability to network is certainly one. Obviously, if you can get up on a pitch stage, that adds significant value to the conference. But the reason why I was bullish on Julian attending Collusion versus Web Summit's in Lisbon. You're talking probably at least 3 or 4 days to
Yeah.
commit to go, and probably more like 5 or 6 by the time the dust settles. Collision's in Toronto. Julian lives in New York, so I mean, he
Yeah.
could literally do it
30-minute
in a
flight.
day.
Yeah.
Right, but he'll probably do it in about 2 days, and it's a little bit less than $1,000 for him to try to go. And I think as somebody who's a first time founder, I think seeing that ecosystem could be helpful. And I think just the repetitive nature of giving your pitch every 6 minutes for 10 hours straight is very helpful for founders.
Yeah. Yeah. I would generally agree. I would say like, I think that if you're going to go, I think it's just important to be completely transparent about why you're going. I mean, it's totally fair to want to go and just party, but just say that's what it is.
No thanks.
On the flip side, though, I'm a big believer that, that most of the value of conferences is on the sidelines. So, if you think your prospective partners are there or existing clients are there or whatever, I think it's important to like attend the conference in the context of like setting up little meet and greets with those people on the sidelines, whether it's coffees or meals or whatever. But there's some value, even if it's hard to measure, there's some value to being visible. And I totally agree with you too. Like getting the reps in of that elevator pitch, particularly for early stage founders, is good. I just think that a lot of early stage founders don't go in with a plan. It's sort of like
Yep.
they're just really betting on serendipity. And I get that that's a thing, but given how hard it is to raise money right now, I think it's important to just have a plan. And so if I was, and if Julian's listening to this, I'm picking on Julian now, but just for anybody in the early stage arena right now, it's like if you're going to go to a conference, I would go with like a named list of people that you're trying to go track down for just even like a handshake, whether it's like prospective clients, prospective partners, even competitors, just trying to get 10, 15, 20 minutes of their time just to shake hands
Yeah.
and make that connection. I mean, I think like one of the other things I think you and I both agree on is that the value of travel, aside from like personally liking it, enjoying it and stuff like that, the value of travel is that in this era that we're in where everybody's on Zoom or Google Meet or whatever, one of the ways to really build relationships is to go shake somebody's hand, even if it
Yeah.
is for 5 minutes. I think I've said it before. Like, I think Zoom and Meet and all the online video tools are really great to maintain relationships, but there really is no substitute for shaking somebody's hand and maybe sharing a meal or something like that. So
Yeah, I agree. And I think one of the things I would also add, just in terms of like the collision path, if you will, in Web Summit, if you're a founder listening and you're thinking about whether you should do this or not, definitely double check with the organizers of those events, because I don't know if they're doing these this year. But in previous years, as an investor, I signed up for office hours at the conference, meaning folks who use the Web Summit app could look me up, and if they thought that I was a worthwhile investment target, they could set up a 15-minute session with me in one of the office hours areas. So I think if you are going to one of these conferences and you want to increase your hit rate chance, then I think trying to use some of those ancillary activities that's beyond your booth, using the app, which should have all the investors listed and stuff like that. Again, I still think you should go into it with the mindset of you're not going because you're going to get a check to come home with. But if you're looking to expand your network, the last time I did office hours at Web Summit, I think I met with something like 12 to 15 founders. that definitely increased the value for me. But also, too, if those founders have an equal number of meetings, again, just expanding your network. So I think if you are thinking about how to justify the money for one of these conferences and you're an investor,
Yep.
if you're a founder, that could be another way to increase the value and increase your potential hit rate.
Mm-hmm. Totally agree.
Cool.
Totally agree.
Well, let's talk about Scarlett Johansson.
The topic that everybody came here for.
Yes, everybody thought we would talk about Scarlett Johansson this week. And while I am a huge fan of many of her movies, we're not talking about those aspects today. We're talking about one of the eerier parts of OpenAI, where they released a new version of ChatGPT. And when they did, the voice of this voiceover agent called Sky sounded eerily similar to Scarlett Johansson. And if that was really where the story ended, you'd say, okay, well, I mean, that's a little bit weird, but so be it. As more information has come out, there is a behind the scenes story where Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, reached out to Scarlett Johansson both personally and through her agent to ask if she would voice the ChatGPT virtual voice, and she declined for personal reasons. So she was very surprised when this came out, and I think there's two different ways to look at this. The first way is, and I'll be interested to see which way you take it. Maybe you've got a third. The first way is that OpenAI is lying, and they actually did create a synthesized voice that fits her voice profile. Or if you believe their reports, they found someone who had a voice very similar to Scarlett Johansson's and synthesized this chatbot voice based on some recordings from this person. And it just happens to be close to Scarlett Johansson. So it becomes that path becomes this question of how close can you get to imitating someone's likeness in voice or in video without infringing upon their, like Scarlett Johansson sells herself as an actress. And so where's that line between imitation and, I guess, plagiarism?
So at the time of this recording, my understanding is that once the lawsuit was filed, OpenAI turned off the voice assistant. So
They did.
that probably doesn't seem good.
I would say it does not bode well for their side of the story.
Yeah, if you're very confident that you can defend whatever it is that you did, then taking it down is probably not what you should do. But anyway, that doesn't look good, just as an armchair quarterback. Now, on the other side of this, I really hope they don't settle, because I think that what's going to be very fascinating about this particular case is how they're going to prove or disprove that the voice is. And I think that it could set the precedent for, going forward, how we determine whether a video of a politician is a deep fake versus real, what are the penalties?
Yeah.
That sort of thing. So I'm hoping they don't. Selfishly, I'm hoping they don't just settle out of court or something like that, because this could actually force the precedent setting that kind of needs to happen in this brave new world that we're in now, particularly with AI. I mean, there are already millions of tools, millions is exaggeration. There's a lot of tools online now where you can feed in 10, 20 photos of yourself and it'll make alternative versions. You can do that with audio as well. So, but yeah, where is the line, and how do they define damages? Like, was she damaged?
Well,
all that being said,
here's another slippery slope. Here's my question for you, because Jeremiah tunes our audio in the background every week when we release this episode. Sometimes, he's fading out background noise. Other times, maybe our mic is too low, so he's boosting our feed. So, there's this other gray area of, let's just say they did use a voice actress for some initial voice samples, and then there was post-production afterwards. If and I know this isn't, well, I don't believe this is what happened, but if Sam Altman is leaning over the shoulder of the person doing those voice changes and saying, no, I want it to sound a little bit more like Scarlett Johansson, can you raise the pitch or can you lower the pitch? Is that against the rules? We don't know what the rules are. So
yeah. I mean, I think I'm certainly not an attorney or something like that. There's always that edge case scenario where,
thank God, because I'm not doing a podcast with an attorney. Like, that's hard.
Yeah,
hard stop.
I was going to say, yeah, nobody would hire me anyway, I think. All right, what is it? I think I said that Rob, our attorney or whatever at RMR, he the biggest compliment he ever paid me was when he said that I find creative ways to get deals done. I was like, I think that's lawyer speak for I tell me if I'm wrong here. It is possible there's a mistake too. It is
Hmm.
possible that like somebody, it is possible that just through sheer luck that, okay, let me say this a different way. There are 7 billion people on the planet, maybe 8 billion now. Probability suggests that there could be somebody else out there that has a very similar voice, in this case to Scarlett Johansson.
Sure.
Can she sue for that? I don't.
It's a good question. Yeah.
This is where we get into like the precedent setting of this is going to be very fascinating.
Yeah.
I think it's going to come down to, and you've sort of alluded to this in your own experience in the past too, but when we talk about these sort of lawsuits, somebody's got to prove that there were damages as well,
Hmm.
and that's where it's going to get very, very fascinating. The other thing I think is very interesting here is regardless of how we got here, I'm not going to determine guilt or anything without, I can't, but however we got here, I think the fact that they picked a voice like this, again, regardless of how they got there, the fact that they picked a voice like this, I think shows just how much they need public acceptance of this technology. Do you know? So it's like they need some sort of, until people trust this thing,
Hmm.
they're not
Trust
going
is
to
a
use it.
trust is a big part of this.
Right. So regardless of how they got here, just the fact that they reached out to her in some way suggests that like they understand that they need to get a voice out there that is recognizable, which is different than, for example, how I understand Amazon and Apple operated. I don't think Amazon and Apple picked a celebrity voice. I think I don't want to say picked a random person,
Sure.
but
Right. Yeah.
it wasn't important to them to have some sort of celebrity endorsement, if you will.
Sure.
So anyway, I hope for all of our sakes that this one actually makes it through the judicial system and through discovery and everything else. It starts to maybe set the precedent for how we're going to hold some of this stuff accountable. Like,
Yeah.
because here's the other thing, by the way, what stops somebody right now? And this is just conjecture, but let's just say I passed away tomorrow, and let's say somebody else then took all of my blog posts, this podcast, my YouTube videos, fed it in, and then created a model, where you could ask AI Paul something later on.
Hmm.
What if I don't want that? you
Right.
know,
No.
um,
Look. I mean, I think, and by the way, like I think that there are. I think that the reason why there's so much. I'm trying to think of the right word here. I think the reason potentially why there's so much struggle between where these lines should be is that I do think there's immense good that comes from AI. And I'll give you one example that tangential to what we're talking about with Scarlett Johansson, but not something you and I have ever discussed. So there's a podcast that I listen to that's co-hosted by a friend of mine named Scott McCartney. It's called the Airlines Confidential Podcast, and the two co-hosts are Scott McCartney, who was a travel editor for the Wall Street Journal for a long time, and then Ben Baldanza, who is an airline CEO for a number of different airlines, including Spirit. And Ben Baldanza's always been known for being willing to say things that no other airline executive would say. He is what I would call very unfiltered. Ben has ALS, and so his voice has slowly been degrading. His mind is there, but ALS is slowing his ability to enunciate and to talk. And so that's a problem for somebody who hosts an audio podcast. So a team of folks worked with them and took recordings of Ben over the years and synthesized all these recordings so that when Scott and Ben are recording, Ben can type his answers to Scott's argument, and this bot will form the answer in Ben Baldanza's voice with Ben Baldanza's mannerisms and all these other things. And so that ability means that Ben Baldanza gets to continue podcasting because he can continue talking away. So like there are incredible aspects here. So impersonating someone's voice can be a good thing, but figuring out the damages when it's a bad thing is very difficult.
well, it's about permissions
Mm-hmm.
and then damages.
Yeah.
Makes me wonder though, are you familiar with, like Creative Commons and all these sort
Mhm.
of legal frameworks? So
Yeah.
for anybody listening, like if you go look up like creativecommons.org, there's different open source licenses that you can apply to your software or to some code you wrote or whatever.
Yeah.
I wonder if at some point you could apply that to your own you'd have to apply that to your posts or your any likenesses around you. Like, I think the issue here is that OpenAI is going to make money off of this product no matter what. So there is some amount of revenue they're making that,
Right.
and then that's it's the commercial use. And you'll see that with Creative Commons too. Like, you can license stuff and
Yeah.
say, hey, it's free to use unless it's for commercial. So anyway, it's going to be really fascinating. Like, can you really license yourself? I think the answer is probably yes, but we'll see. We'll see what happens here.
Yeah, I would imagine you can license yourself. Again, this is like you mentioned permissions and damages. I just don't like that's the long pole here. How do you define like permissions? I think are easier to define, but the damages are incredibly complex in cases like this. I mean, what are the damages? Does Scarlett Johansson not get the next movie deal? Do people have a lesser opinion of her? Like, I mean, those are all possibilities, and they have massive price tags attached to them because she's a very popular actor and makes a lot of money when she films a film. But like, how do you prove she didn't get the next role? It's a slippery slope. And by the way, that's I think that's probably one of my bigger issues here is because it's tougher to prove. The impetus is on people to prove the OpenAIs of the world wrong. Well, Scarlett Johansson went out and hired some of the best legal minds in the country to help defend her in this case. But my friend Leslie, who writes great Disney content in California, she can't hire a team of lawyers. She doesn't make enough money off of her thing to do that. So there's varying degrees here, and I think unfortunately the small guys get squeezed out really quickly here from the standpoint of being able to wage a lawsuit, and they need the Scarlett Johanssons of the world to force decisions on these things.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and again, I'm just playing attorney, but this sort of just reminds me of like handwriting analysis. It is generally speaking admissible in court. You can actually, if you were trying to determine if somebody forged a check or whatever.
Yeah.
It is generally understood that you can submit proven handwriting to use as a comparison against, maybe whatever it is that you're accused of.
Yeah.
So here it's like, okay, voice. I can't recall the last time somebody actually did this with voice, but
yeah.
That being said, sorry, one other thing. I just heard on NPR, I think it was NPR yesterday, that the FTC, I believe, maybe it's the FTC or the FCC, whoever's got jurisdiction over robocallers, somebody up in New York is getting hit with a $6 million fine for creating a robo-dialer that called voters in a certain county, pretended to be Joe Biden, and tried to discourage them from voting.
Oh, I think I heard a little bit about this, yeah.
And so in that case, like I wonder, like how did they determine, how did they determine that it wasn't him? I wonder.
Right.
I mean, I think in this case, he admitted it. I think that was what was reported in the news, but what if he didn't, and the burden was on the prosecution then to take voice samples? I don't know. That'd be really fascinating to see how they do it.
Well, you're speaking my language as a New York Italian. Deny, deny, deny. All right,
that's basically how I handle my email inbox. But okay.
All right, let's pivot to another OpenAI story, and this one's interesting, and I'll be curious to see if you picked up on a little piece of nuance in this as we discuss it. So essentially, what's being reported and we think is corroborated by Sam Altman, the CEO, is that OpenAI has what I would regard as one of the most restrictive exit agreements that I've heard of, essentially with any company, let alone public, private, startup, or all that. But essentially, what they're saying is that if employees leave the company voluntarily or involuntarily, and they either decline to sign a non-disparagement agreement and a non-disclosure agreement, non-disparagement meaning they can't say bad things about the company, that forbids them for the rest of their lives from criticizing their former employers, that they will lose any vested stock. So I'm going to stop there and say, give me your opinions on this.
On just what you just said there?
Or any other pieces of it.
Okay, well, I guess what I would just say is right off the bat is that, look, we're not talking about unsophisticated people here. I mean, Sam Altman used to run Y Combinator, right?
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, at least, the companies I've seen over the last 15 years, the reality is that all of them use a standard template as a starting point for their contracts. So whether it's a consulting agreement, employment agreement, separation agreement, whatever, standard. In my own experience, this language has never been in any of those templates that have been ever published online. I've never seen it. Now, somebody could point out that I'm wrong here, and that's fine. Sure. But I guess where I'm going with this is that this particular clause was not accidentally inserted. And given the track record and the experience of the people involved here, it's hard for me to accept the publicly stated, oops, I didn't know this was part of the contract and I'm going to fix it now. This was put in there, even though it's probably not enforceable. I mean, every attorney probably told them that it was not
Right.
enforceable. It was not meant to be enforceable. It's the threat as the deterrent. It doesn't have to be enforceable because the average employee is not going to fight this. You don't want to. You would effectively destroy all your future employability if you went into this. So anyway, I guess what I'm just saying is that the part I find hard to believe is that this was accidentally inserted without approval, given this person's track record.
The track record plays here for sure. And I think what's interesting, and keeping in mind, like, you and I don't have any specific insight here, but Sam Altman has a tweet, and the company also issued a statement. And I'm going to read one part of it because I think it's interesting. He says, in regards to recent stuff about how OpenAI handles equity, we have never clawed back anyone's vested equity, nor will we do that if people do not sign a separation agreement or don't agree to a non-disparagement agreement. So here's the nuance.
I love this. Go.
He says, they won't claw it back if you don't sign the separation agreement.
Right.
They won't claw it back if you don't agree to the non-disparagement agreement. And then there's the quote from a former employee, Daniel, and I hope I pronounced that last name right, Cocotalo, who posted that he quit OpenAI due to losing confidence that it would behave responsibly around the terms of AGI, around the time of AGI, and then confirmed publicly that he had to surrender what would have likely turned out to be a huge sum of money in order to quit without signing the document. So I see two areas here. First off, that he's saying that he would have likely, that he had to surrender vested equity.
Yep.
The other thing here too that I think is really interesting in Sam's statement, Sam doesn't say that they won't claw back equity if you disparage them.
Right.
He just says if you don't sign the agreement.
Say. Correct.
Yes.
It's what he didn't say that's important there.
Yes.
A very intelligent way, by the way, to respond, right? You're basically responding and probably placating most people that don't read.
Well, and here's the problem.
There.
You just said it about Sam running Y Combinator. If this is Joe Blow on the street just making a comment, I could understand where it'd be like, oh, well, maybe they just didn't address that scenario. Sam Altman's a smart enough guy. I have to believe his words are intentional. And based on his track record, I have to believe that he intentionally left out the part that they would take someone's vested equity away if they said that they were bad.
Yeah. Yes. Here's the thing. Remember, this is the same. He used to run the same organization that will openly disallow certain investors from attending the demo days or even investing in their companies if you say anything about how high the valuations have gotten.
Right.
And it's publicly acknowledged everywhere that there is an internal blacklist that's passed around between the Y Combinator founders and stuff like that. So, yeah, I mean, again, it's just, I guess what I would just say is this is a masterclass in, responding with a non-response. And I think it's unfortunate, but it tells you how high they believe the stakes are with this. So I wouldn't encourage other founders to go do this. I don't think it's the right thing to do. I don't think you can I don't think you should be suppressing somebody's right to say what they want to say.
Yeah, I don't mean to interrupt you. I just, at the end of the day, I just don't see any good reason to tell people that they can't disparage a company on the way out the door. To your point, it's just, this is what you're going to spend your time focusing on. If this is a company I'm investing in, I'm saying, the windshield is a lot larger than the rearview mirror. Focus on the windshield, not focus on what's behind you. And on top of that, what sort of precedent are you setting for the next person when you say, we have an agreement, your equity is vested, it's yours now, and then I take it away later? Why should I ever believe you?
Right. I think the only time you should lose vested equity is if you don't exercise it within the time period that might be allotted. And I don't know what it is for OpenAI, but at least in my portfolio, I would say that the average, or the most, this is anecdotal, but the most common that I see is you need to exercise it typically within 90 days of your departure.
Right.
Although I've seen a growing trend of, that being extended out to maybe 5 or 10 years because of these other platforms like Carta and stuff that make it easier for companies to not have to deal with it.
Hmm.
But yeah, I mean, that's more normal, but you don't lose it unless you let the
Right.
time expire.
Right.
But yeah, this is just not right. It's just not
No.
right. And actually, then you get into the whole like whistleblower stuff too. Like, does this actually prevent people from actually calling out what could eventually be discovered to be
Right.
bad or unlawful? I don't know.
Yeah.
So, so it's just shady behavior. But again, when you take it into context, like the pedigree and the experience of these people, this was not an oversight, even though it was sort of portrayed as like, "Oops, it shouldn't have happened. I'm so sorry."
We've never done this, and we'll never do it. We're changing our agreements, except
Yeah,
maybe.
the response should have been, "Oh man, total mistake. We own it. It's being retroactively, deleted and whatever." That is what should have been done. But the fact that that didn't happen tells you the language is going to stay.
Yeah.
But trust us, guys. We've never done this before. We don't plan to start now. Oh,
All right. Well, let's really quickly try and see if we can tackle this bad decision gone maybe better by OpenTable. If for folks who are listening or watching, you'll remember, call it 6 or 7 weeks ago, we talked about OpenTable and this decision where they were going to release the names and profile pictures of all anonymous reviews on their website. And for folks who maybe didn't watch that first episode, we'll include a link to it in the show notes. But OpenTable is a popular restaurant reservations platform where you can make reservations across a number of different restaurants around the world. And you can also leave reviews, and those reviews are helpful for obviously for future customers. Well, so OpenTable made this decision that they were going to essentially unmask everyone and just have everyone's review now go from anonymous to public. And there was a large outcry about this, not just from us, but from lots of sources. And they backtracked on this and decided to do exactly what you and I said they should have done. If they felt like they really needed to make reviews have some level of authenticity and identity to them, that they should do that on a going forward basis, not on a historical basis. And they probably didn't hear us, Paul, but they probably heard someone make this and decided that maybe they would unwind what has to be one of the worst decisions they've ever made.
I think that. Well, first of all, good for them for walking it back.
Yep.
I just, it's just amazing to me that somebody just sort of so cavalierly decided that this was going to change. But I don't know. This is like one of those examples of like, I don't think they would have walked this back had there not been some impact to their business. Like, and I think that, the trust is the hard part to kind of, I'll just speak as a consumer, right? Like
Right.
I never really cared about how online bookings worked, and if I was reserving a table somewhere to have dinner with you or my buddies or whoever, I don't care if I had to use like, OpenTable or whatever the platform might be. But now all of a sudden, I will say that like just the other night, I booked a reservation for a dinner that I was doing with a couple of my college buddies. And it said OpenTable, booked through OpenTable. And for whatever reason, in that moment, I was like, I'm driving anyway. Why don't I just call and book directly? Like, I
Hmm.
just didn't want to deal with OpenTable because
Yeah.
I lost a little bit of trust. Like, what's next here? Is my dining history going to be publicized? And I don't know that I want that.
Well, you bring up
So,
a really good point, because what I was going to say is, I wonder how this impacts the number of reviews they get in the future. But you're taking it a step further and saying that in your instance, that not only are you less likely to leave a review, but that you actually felt a little hesitant to use the product because you don't know what else they might do that you might not trust.
correct. Yeah. I mean, I as a consumer, I think I'm pretty average as a consumer in the sense that I generally understand that whatever I do online is going to be exposed in the aggregate. Hey, this many people are driving. I mean, look, this is how Google traffic data works, right? Like
Right.
I drive down a road,
Right.
Google aggregates the number of users online and then uses
Yeah.
that to figure out some of the traffic. It's one of the signals they use for traffic. I know that as a consumer. But in this case, I think OpenTable crossed a line.
Yeah.
We all live with this sort of, we all as consumers live under a certain threat that data might leak or get hacked or whatever. And there are penalties for that. The government steps in and says you got to notify people if their data was stolen or exposed or whatever. But this is like kind of a new beast where
Yeah.
like I feel comfortable saying publicly that I've never posted something anonymously on Open Table, but I also understand some people have, and they
Right.
have reasons for that.
Sure.
But the way this was handled, and it is sort of swept under the table, no large apology, no steps for like how data is going to be governed in the future and all that. I don't know. It just kind of makes me feel like we're probably there's probably one more cavalier decision away from see where Paul's dined, right? Which I don't know that I
I think
want
I
that
want to see.
public. Like,
I want it. I want to know.
like, but it starts to cross the line into like not only privacy but safety as well. It's
Yeah.
like you remember like those old systems like Foursquare and stuff where you checked in to places.
Yeah. I
You
still.
chose
Yeah.
to check in, so by you doing that, I'm not saying you. I'm just saying that like when we as consumers used platforms like that, we were explicitly opting in to tell people where we are. Maybe we're trying to meet other people. Maybe we're trying to publish our history. I don't know. But you did something explicitly to make that happen. In this case, the threat of it happening and it getting exposed without permission, I don't really like that. Like I don't really want people like if I'm having dinner with you, like let me just like I'm nobody important. But if my family is meeting your family for dinner, I'm not worried about masked gunmen coming in. I just don't want to get pitched during that dinner. Your kids and my kids. I want them to hang out. You know what I'm saying? Like, I want to have explicit control over who knows where I'm eating or hanging out with my family. And anyway, I'm rambling. The point is though, is that I've lost trust, and I got to
Yeah.
believe that enough of their business was impacted that they walked this back.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. And to close this out, I'm going to make a little bit of I'm going to make a little of a confession. I have a confession. I have a confession, Paul. So Foursquare actually became a product called Swarm. They rebranded it at some point, and they've had some recent layoffs. But I will tell you that a bunch of my fellow aviation geeks, we used to use that app to track our flight history because there's another tool called Jet Lovers that would take your Swarm check-ins and you put them on an airplane map for when you were flying between different airports. I will confess that I still use Swarm, and that the home airport that we share, Washington Dulles, I am the mayor of all 4 concourses of the airport and of the Capital One Lounge. So there you have it.
I'm happy for you. I don't. I don't even know how to respond to that. I'm happy
Me
for you.
neither. It's a very proud accomplishment for me, let me tell you.
Yeah. Speaking of that, by the way, I wonder why more and more of those lounges and stuff don't capitalize on that. I don't know. Like I'm surprised that somebody like I'm making this up, right? But like for example, Capital One, you and I have been talking offline about like credit card rewards and all that stuff, right? And you got the Capital One lounge that just opened up in Dulles right by you and me. It just makes me wonder like why one of those companies hasn't just been acqui-hired into something like this to maybe like attract more people like you. I don't know. Because, one of the
More
other
people like
technologies that
me.
I don't think has been used very often, I don't know why, do you remember there was like a period from I feel like there was a period from 2012 to maybe 2015 where when you went to certain places, you know how when you go into some of these lounges, they pop a little screen, you connect to the Wi-Fi and it's got like all this legalese and you have to hit accept.
Yeah.
Well, there was a period of time between, I feel like 2012 and 2015 where some of the Wi-Fi routers had like a Facebook check-in flow. So it was like
Yep. Yep.
you accepted the terms and conditions, but you did it in a way that also gave them permission to post on your Facebook timeline that you were
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. By the way, there's never a better reason to use a personal hotspot than that right there.
Maybe that's the reason why people don't use it or companies don't use it anymore. But I wonder. I've always wondered why more places like physical places like these lounges don't actually encourage some people to do that. Anyway, I'm rambling. The point is though, is that we've always talked about this idea about the opportunity at the intersection of online and offline. And this is just one of those things that I think about a lot. Is like you and I probably bypass the, posts on Facebook that I'm hanging out at the lounge or whatever. But that doesn't necessarily mean that everybody would.
Yeah, and I can tell you, if I had to check in, if I had to do a social check-in to access somebody's Wi-Fi, be a very quick, I'll just use my hotspot. That wouldn't take me long.
You heard it here. Ed will not promote your business for access to Wi-Fi. But,
No, I just
but to be
don't.
fair,
No,
you also carry a huge backpack with like you're like the tech prepper. You've got everything. I just remember that one time we were at office hours and you pulled out like what do you call it? Like a power splitter thing. And I was like, what in the like, you're like Mary Poppins. Your bag is like Mary Poppins' bag. It just has it's bottomless.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Yeah, no, if you need a cable, if you need an adapter, I'm your guy. I'm your Radio Shack. Just put it that way.
I was going to say, in a different life, you should have just bought Radio Shack before it shut down, and that way you would have your electronics close to you everywhere on the planet.
All right, well, let's shut this down before Jeremiah shuts us down.
I love it. All right, man. Well, I'm glad to have gotten to spend some time with you. I'm glad I'm not breathing on you directly here. You doing any travel over the next week or so?
Of course. Yep. Head out to Vegas next week. You going to get out of quarantine anytime soon?
No, we're going to be around here. And then next week, we'll go down to Richmond for some family parties and stuff like that, family birthdays and stuff like that. But next trip, I think, is going to be in July. I think we'll do Hilton Head with the family for a week of summer, but we need to probably book that now.
Yeah. Probably.
If only I knew a guy. So
yeah.
Oh, by the way, I'm going to say this on the show so that you can't totally murder me. My mother-in-law needs your help with her booking again. I told her that she'd have to grovel at your feet and other things. So anyway,
I would never have your mother-in-law grovel. I would absolutely have you grovel, but her no.
Don't now that I've said it on the show, you can't be angry at me when I text you about it later.
Yep, Jeremiah just cut that 45 seconds. Thank you.
All right, man. Have a great week, and I will talk to you soon.
All right, man.